Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree. So this is a very crucial video if you are a beginner gardener and you're starting your starting your garden for the very first time. There are 3 very important letters you need to know, and it's going to affect the harvest you get from the crops that you grow, and we're going to be talking about that today. Those 3 letters are NPK. What is NPK? NPK is essentially it is acronym for the macro or main major big nutrients that all plants need in order to thrive and grow and produce whatever it is that you want them to produce. So NPK stands for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, which is a K on a periodic table. Just like humans need certain nutrients like iron and calcium and all this other stuff in order for us to thrive and grow and be healthy, so do plants. The 3 major nutrients that every plant needs are N, P, and K. This is very important because each of those elements, I'm just going to call them, they redirect the plant's growth to certain areas, if that makes sense. I'll get into that later. So because NPK determines where your plant growth is directed, certain fertilizers contain more of one nutrient than the other in order to help you train your plants to grow in the areas you want them to grow in. For example, if you're growing a crop that you want bigger leaves for, you'll want a higher concentration of a certain NPK versus if you want the plant growth to be going more towards the fruit, you'll want a different concentration. And these numbers of however much NPK is in the fertilizer that you're using is going to be on the bottle. So this is an example of the fertilizer that I used both at my time working on an organic farm and in my own garden. It's a fish emulsion, and you can see the bottom 3 numbers that denotes how much of what is in it. So it's always going to be in the order NPK. So this organic harvest, Neptune's organic harvest, has 2 parts nitrogen, 2 parts N to 4 parts phosphorus, which is P, and 1 part potassium. Oh, what do each of these nutrients do for the plant? So I got my notes. Nitrogen promotes vegetative growth and leaf growth, primarily leaf growth. So nitrogen is crucial for building chlorophyll, which allows the plants to photosynthesize. And you know, plants take in the energy from the sun and create food for themselves. That's essentially photosynthesis. And it helps to promote healthy leaf and stem growth. You think about nitrogen, nitrogen promotes bigger leaf growth. So if you're growing a plant where you want big leaves, like kale, for example, collard greens, Swiss chard, you would want a fertilizer with a higher concentration or a higher ratio of nitrogen as opposed to phosphorus, which I will get into next. If you have a plant where you don't have enough nitrogen, the plants might turn yellow or the growth might be stunted. And if you have a plant with too much nitrogen, the plant will be super huge because it promotes leaf growth, but you won't get any flowers or fruits. That'll take me into the second point, which is phosphorus. So phosphorus stimulates flower blooming and root growth and seed production. So phosphorus is an important element where you will want a higher ratio of when it comes to fruiting plants. And that is not just a sweet fruit like a blueberry or a strawberry. That's any botanical fruit, period. When I say botanical fruit, that's anything with a seed. So the thing that comes to my mind is tomatoes. I grew tomatoes on the farm I worked at for the past 2 years. And tomatoes need a higher ratio of phosphorus because you want the fruit, and all fruits start off as a flower. So phosphorus promotes flower blooming, seed production, and supports root development. So for a plant like tomatoes that fruits, or eggplant that fruits, strawberries that fruits, anything that fruits, you will want a higher amount of phosphorus versus nitrogen. So just to give you an example again, so if you were using kale, if you were growing kale, you would want your kale to have a higher concentration of nitrogen because nitrogen supports leaf growth. You will want big kale leaves. You will want big collard green leaves. Versus tomato, you will want a bigger fruit. So if you were to use a fertilizer with a high ratio of nitrogen, on a fruiting plant like tomatoes, your tomato plants would have huge leaves, but you would have tiny baby fruits, if any fruits at all. So for tomatoes, you would want a fertilizer with a higher amount of phosphorus, because the phosphorus is going to direct more of the growth towards producing the flowers, which will become tomatoes, and producing the seeds and the fruit itself, basically. So potassium is the last one, which is K. Potassium supports plant disease immunity. Plants get diseases just like humans do. I experienced that this past year. We had some red Russian kale. It caught a disease. Plants have diseases too, just like people do. So potassium supports immunity towards diseases, and it affects the fruit quality. Oh, back to phosphorus. Not enough phosphorus can look like the leaves turning red or purple. When it comes to, go back to potassium, if your plant doesn't have enough potassium, it can look like super thin skinned or small, super small fruits, and it being very susceptible to disease. So potassium supports the plant's uptaking water from the roots and contributes to overall plant health and fruit quality. And it's really like helping the plant endure the stress of the elements, the stress of the environment, disease, immunity. So potassium, just think about it like an immune herb for the plants. So yeah, that's just a simple, easily digestible breakdown of NPK and the role of NPK in your plants, in your garden. If you're a beginner gardener, you must get accustomed with these 3 nutrients. Of course, there are micronutrients that are important as well, but again, the 3 main ones, NPK. So just to summarize everything: N, nitrogen; P, phosphorus; K, potassium. Nitrogen promotes or sends more of the growth of the plant towards the leaves. So nitrogen, leaf growth; phosphorus, fruit growth; and potassium is like immunity. Nitrogen, leaf growth; phosphorus, fruit growth; potassium, immunity. And when you're looking for your fertilizers, the ratio will be on the, whatever it's a bottle, a bag, you'll always see the ratio in the order NPK. So when you're searching for your crops, if you have a fruiting crop, you want to look for something with a little higher phosphorus ratio. If you're looking for a crop that you're eating it for the leaves, like collard greens, like kale, you'll want something with a little higher nitrogen. Just make sure they all have some potassium in them, because there are some that have zeros on those ratio numbers. If you're new to gardening and you don't know where to start at all, make sure you subscribe to my channel and go to my website. I will link it in the description box. I have a gardening blog, which is breaking down everything you need to do to plan your garden. Winter is for planning, so that when it comes time for the spring, you know exactly what you're supposed to do. You already have everything. It talks about the first step, finding your growing zone, finding out what you want to grow, your soil blend, everything. And I'll be continuing to make videos like this all throughout the growing season and showing y'all the progress on the crops that I'm growing. So make sure you subscribe if you have not already. Follow me on Instagram. I also talk about gardening content there, and I will put the link to my Instagram page, the gardening blog, in my description box. So make sure you like this video, and I'll see y'all next time.